Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today we are greeted by a very special guest, Chris Levine.
Hey. Oh, too late. Did I miss the snap?
I'm gonna add a
restart.
second sound effect.
Damn
then.
it.
Yeah.
There you go. He will. Oh, he will.
I probably will. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, cool.
Yeah, for all our listeners out there, we had director Scott Eggleston on a couple months ago promoting Bad Bones, and now we have the star, one of the co-leads of Bad Bones, here with us today. He's also been in a few other movies like The Handler and Anabolic Life. And we just kind of thought it'd be great to have him on the channel and kind of talk to him, pick his brain a little bit about filmmaking, about acting. Before we get into that, though, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. That way you're updated on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below. YouTube.com/2for1studios, the best place to consume the content. Of course, if you want more content, or if you want more 2 for 1, go to 2for1studios.com. And if you didn't know, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course special guest appearances throughout the year. And not to date the podcast, but this weekend they are having Jason David Frank, the original Green Ranger, there to sign some checks and kiss some babies, whatever they do. So go check them out, and it'll be a really cool time. I'll be there, of course, so go check them out. All right.
Woo! Damn, bro.
Yeah, that was.
I know
all that.
that wasn't my smoothest one. So most of the time I get through it pretty okay. That was kind of stumbling.
But I think you only took like 2 full breaths that whole time.
That's probably why.
That was the
That's probably
impressive
why.
part. Yeah, the lung capacity.
It's been a busy day.
When he's like about to like tell him what he was, he's like,
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Chris, real quick, me and Daniel, one thing we've probably learned while we're doing this whole film thing, the podcast, all this other stuff, is that there's no set path to get to where we are today. Like, right, every person I meet in the industry, they got there no same way. So I want to know from you, how did you get into filmmaking, and what led you into acting in general?
I've always liked horror movies. I remember, like, as a kid, like sneaking the VCR to tape like local channels that would play like The Fly at 3 a.m. and weird things like that. And then that kind of led to like my late 20s, random enough, where I was a marketing director and I was just unhappy, man. And I started writing these little like hosting videos for myself for the company. And like, I was like, oh, I kind of dig this. Like, maybe I can read a teleprompter. And then next thing you know, I started like writing a script, and then I quit. And then I was like, you know what? Googled how to be an actor, and 10 years later, here I am.
There you go. How do I become rich?
3 easy steps.
That's what I want to Google.
Yeah.
No, it's how do I choose the worst career ever? Like, boom.
That's probably accurate. Do you live in LA now? I know you. It seems your IMDb. You grew up in Hollywood, Florida. Is that correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I honestly didn't know that there was a place called Hollywood, Florida. Is that something you hear a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I was born in Hollywood Memorial, and I was like, damn, I was like born to maybe be where I'm at right now, right? It's
on the East Coast Hollywood, yeah.
There you go.
It's pretty cool.
What do you you said that you kind of stumbled upon this process, I guess. What's kept you coming back to the well, so to speak? I mean, obviously you enjoy it, but what specifically do you enjoy about it that kind of keeps it fresh and new each time, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's the idea of being a storyteller, right? And I think whether you do podcasts or write books or art in general, I think there's something that awakens inside of you, and it's like a glass that's never full. And every little bit of art that you do or whatever in your field, it just fills it a little bit, right? And it's never full, but at least you can keep filling it. And it's kind of like the idea that filmmaking and storytelling and acting, it's just always trying to reach that filled cup that'll never be truly full. I just love it. It's also the idea of like the responsibility behind it, of being able to tell us to play God. Really, as a writer, you're playing God, right? So there's a responsibility there, and I also take acting as a sense of like the ability to take someone without a voice and give them a voice in some way or form. So yeah, that's that.
No, that's me. That's a great answer. No, that's
Would you have told me it was
fantastic.
a shitty answer though? Would you have said, you know what, Chris?
He would not have. No, he
I
butters
probably
me
would
up.
not have.
Yeah.
I probably would not
Yeah.
have. I just texted Daniel actually. What a shitty answer. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's,
I know
that's
that.
true. Yeah,
I
we'll
know
prove
it.
it.
Yeah,
now.
that's wild. No, that's awesome though. I mean, I think that kind of rings true for me and Daniel too. I mean, well, partly I think sometimes like, man, I wish I had more, and this is not true for everyone. This is just a general statement I'm making. I wish I had more trauma in my life, because I think that I could have channeled it a little bit more into my art.
I do not
right?
feel that way. I feel opposite.
I know you don't. But I think it's a great thing to look at. You're putting something, into a glass, so to speak, and kind of filling it up. And I think the reason why I enjoy filmmaking so much is because I share that time watching movies with my father. And so it kind of gave me an outlet to kind of bond with him and kind of see the world the way he saw it when he grew up, sort of thing. And so I think it's a great thing to kind of share with other people. And if you can make something that kind of connects to them, I think it's, that's a very special thing that it's rare. It happens a lot, but at the same time, it's rare. I think it's a really cool thing.
That's a great answer, by the way.
Thank you. Daniel just texted me what a shitty answer.
I did. Yeah.
Well, what's Daniel's answer? What do you got, Daniel?
Yeah, Daniel.
Well, I just actually wanted to ask you. You've been doing this 10 years. I mean, that's a long time, and like you said, all art, but especially acting, it requires a certain level of emotional vulnerability, right? For one to like get in the head of a character you're playing, but I think also just with yourself in order to kind of tap into those, deeper emotional kind of performances, right? And I know for me, a big part of like, I can always tell my art suffers when I'm not kind of like maintaining my mental and emotional well-being, right? And I there's always a direct line from there. So like, I guess my question is like, what are things that you do to kind of like stay tapped into that, right? Or like to be able to, acting is fun because you get to play lots of different roles. So like, what is kind of your process for getting into those roles or getting into those emotional states and like kind of pulling on those genuine emotions?
Yeah, I think early on here in LA, I had an acting coach that kind of awoken me to my senses, like all the time, where it's like, I now hear things a little bit better, or it's not that I hear them better. I just listen for things. Right. And so now I'm already exploring the world that I'm in a little bit more than the normal person would. So being tapped in that sense kind of it kind of puts me on all the time. I also never shy away from any emotions when I feel them coming. I know as men growing up, we're kind of like, don't cry, that's for girls. And like that was, and without being as harsh, as brash as that, my parents were kind of the same way. Hey, you don't need it. There's no need to cry. Right. So now as an actor, I have to find that emotion again. So when I'm watching a movie or something like that, and I let myself be emotional. Like I never hide away. Like, no, I'm not crying. You're crying, like, and that's, to me, that's part of allowing myself to be vulnerable. So when I need to tap into it, my body's like, okay, we've kind of done something like this in the recent history, that's part of the thing. So it's being aware of my surroundings a little bit more than the average human, being able to accept emotions as they arise, and also realizing when emotions are getting probably too high of level. Like if I'm in an argument with someone and I feel it raising, I almost have that out of body where I'm like, okay, channel this, but that's not for right now, right? Like those are things too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're talking about is reminding me of just kind of principles of mindfulness that are taught like in meditation, right? Like just kind of, and even just that kind of awareness of your surroundings, right? You're being very present, just to notice what is going on around you. You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're being in the present moment. Honestly, that's a huge thing for me is meditation and mindfulness and things like that. That's really cool. And I think even like, as a writer, I'm even constantly like noticing like, cause I think most writers are people watchers probably, and just like to observe, and just sometimes like the random little moments of just genuine dialogue between people that you could probably never come up with for a script, right? Because it's like, I would never think, but that is so genuine. That's such a real moment that I want to capture that and bring it in. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I thought that was really cool what you said.
Nah, dead on. Yeah, you have to be a people watcher. You have to like see people in conversations and like how they sit and how we're always kind of doing something. It's very rare that people are just in a conversation just like, you know, stuck, right? So, and yeah, exactly. As a writer too, you have to do that.
Yeah, you know, speaking of writing, Chris, it says on your IMDb that you're not only an actor, but you've directed some, you've edited some, you've even been a cinematographer on a project or so. Do you enjoy doing that stuff as much as acting, or you just dipping your toe in, or just you trying to? The way I look at it is, you know, you're a journeyman, right? You're trying to learn all the fields. That way, it kind of reinforces the main position you want to do. But what is it though? Is it you're just dipping your toe, or you just something you're actually thinking about pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, acting is like that's the bread and butter. But I learned pretty quickly here, the first 6 months in LA, that there is a lot of mid-30s white guys that look like me. And I said, well,
Yes.
am I just going to wait for like someone to be like, no, you're the white guy that I want today, right? Like, no. So I immediately said, I need to start writing my own shit. And so that's what I do now. I instead of waiting for people to create things for me, I write to create things for myself. And I've done that in the short film side a lot earlier in my career. And then Anabolic Life, I wrote that, and No Way Out. And, you know, I put myself in my own movies because it's a lot easier to be casted when you're doing the casting.
Oh yeah.
No, but I think there's something to that though. I mean, a lot of people, at least around here, I talk to, and they're trying to create a demo reel or X, Y, and Z, and they're just getting these background. Maybe they're just passing, you know, as an extra or in a coffee shop or something, and they're putting that in their demo reel. And I'm like, you know, if you really want to pursue it, you know, you should either get someone to help you just make a scene yourself and put you as the star and kind of show your talent off. Like, make your own movie and cast yourself and use that resource to kind of, you know, prop yourself up a little bit. And also it's more practice. I mean, to me, it's not a lose-lose. You not lose time, but I think you're going to lose time, you know, just putting, here's my 5-bit rolls where I was literally, you see my shoe or my baseball cap. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not always the best route to go things, but I think it's awesome. I think it's a great thing to make your own projects.
Let me butt in, Chris, because I feel like we've like missed like the cardinal like sin of questioning like in film world. Like, can you give us like it's hard for me to nail it down to a top 3, but 3 of your favorite films that
I've been in or I've watched?
No, sorry, just like you've watched, like growing up, or like.
Oh yeah.
Even I'm just thinking like there's movies that got me into movie making, or movies that inspired me down to genre or whatever. Yeah. So just your top 3 that you're like, these are my favorites.
Yeah.
Or 3 of them. Don't feel like it has to be 1, 2, and 3, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a movie that specifically was like, oh, I want to do that, you know. But I do think Jurassic Park was like just so epic. You know, I think I was like 10 when it came out. It's just such and kind of changed my mind on what movies were, I think, at that time too. I definitely love the original Night of the Living Dead, the George Romero black and white one. Like, there's just something so raw and scary about it, and like, you know, we kind of have kind of used that premise even till today. And then lastly, I mean, I don't know. There's like a lot of films that I really, I could say, you know, I really love, and it's kind of a newer film, but like it really affected me in a cool way, is I Am Legend with Will Smith.
I love that film.
It's a great movie.
It's cool. And like that director is the guy from Hunger Games, Francis Lawrence. And like, he has like quite the list of films, but I Am Legend, I think it was cool. I think Will Smith just killed it in that. So it's a cool premise.
He literally awesome. Like is the only actor for like most, like over half of that film. He's the only human being on screen, and he carries it. Bouncing off that question a little bit, you know, as a writer, is there like a genre or a style or anything that you particularly gravitate towards in writing? Or like, I know for me, like science fiction is like I grew up watching just like Star Trek with my dad, and so like there's just something about the science fiction genre that to me feels like there's just extra amounts of limitless possibilities, because I can think of any kind of technology or like alien. I can do whatever I want, and there's no one that can be like, well, that's not realistic. You know what I mean? So yeah, is there like a genre or any kind of like that you like to write for, or that you maybe just feel particularly like you do well, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with, and not the problem, but the way I've always written was I've always written for low budgets, right? So I've never actually been able to even think about something like sci-fi because those budgets can be limitless. And so I've always kept it on a grounded level of things that maybe I could actually produce. So
that's very
in that
smart.
sense, so like if I wrote a sci-fi film where I was like, I'm going to star in this thing, and it's like, yeah, it needs a $30 million budget. I'm like, well, maybe soon. So I don't usually write like that, but I do write. I think horror comes pretty natural to me. I just enjoy it. But like lately, I've been hired to write like some thrillers, and my first real feature we made was straight up just a drama. The Anabolic Life steroid movie. So there's, I'm okay with each genre. I think horror is probably the easiest for me to get through. But I'd like to write like a really good comedy one day. That's really hard to do, but something like just kind of raunchy and fun. I
find comedy, I think everyone does. Comedy is the hardest, it's just the cadence and just, am I funny? Is this funny? It's always a nightmare sometimes. Well, me and Daniel in the process of writing a horror film actually. And one of the things that we were talking about indie filmmaking. One of the things that we really are trying to pay attention to is what's some of the locations that we have around us and how can we use those locations to our benefit? What's some of the things that, when you're writing an indie film that you're kind of mindful of as you're writing this low budget movie? Like, you say you think you might have anywhere from, let's go really low, like $250,000 to a really low budget, $5 million. What's some of the things that when you go into the process of writing, like, okay, I know I need to hit these markers to make sure I kind of stay in a constrained budget?
Yeah, no, you're right. The first thing I think of is locations as well, and what locations I can get for free. And then I also think of like my immediate talent pool of actors and actresses that I know would either be down to shoot something that doesn't pay them that well, or I know that they would just, be good at that role that I can write for. So I don't have to spend too much money in casting and things like that. So yeah, locations, availability of actors around me. And then probably try to stay away from anything at night. You know what I mean? Extra lighting, and it's tough. Tough at a $250,000 budget to get night lighting correct.
Right.
So, whenever I read scripts from people and they have like night scenes, I go, hey, can we do this like at sunset or in the morning or something? Because I don't care who, with your, if you don't have like a $5 million budget, you can't make the moon.
Right.
No,
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's different.
So, yeah, you're right though. Same stuff. Locations, talent.
Yeah, and it makes sense. The reason we're writing a horror, or one of the reasons, is for one, we came up with a good idea, but two, it's just like this is will be one of the easiest to get funded. Even just trying to find investors, it's like, hey, here's the returns on like horror films, or like I remember. We had a professor that produced a couple of horror films, and they didn't do really anything in the States, but like they like sold out theaters in France. You know what I mean? And it's like C level horror films. You know what I mean? That are like that you can get international distribution on. There's just like predictable returns. If you can hit a certain level of quality at least. No,
and I usually tell people, especially if they're making their first feature. But they're knowledgeable, like you guys obviously are, is to reach out to sales agents and distributors and just say, hey, I'm working on a film. Do you have any names that are selling well international? And then at least now, well, maybe I can afford a day with Tony Todd, and put him on the poster. And that's what people do. That's what Bruce Willis does now, right? Like, you pay him like $1 million for a day or two, and now he's on the poster and he's in your trailer, and make your money back.
It sells money. Yeah, it sells money.
Yeah. Sells money, also makes it too.
Yeah.
That's true. Now, you wrote Anabolic Life. I assume you had a pretty big hand in producing it. If you're acting in it, you're writing it too.
Yeah.
How'd you get Daniel Baldwin on your film set? That's just curious.
Yeah.
I'm
that's the thing
fan.
I learned. Yeah, I learned making that film like 5 years ago, whatever, 6 years ago, that no one is out of reach in this town. Like, no one is above a paycheck and no one is above an email, to be honest with you. So even with something like this, with me starring, no name, like no credit at the time either, we did have a casting director, and she wasn't CSA or anything like that. Just she tried to do casting, and literally just reached out to his people, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is." I think it was like $3,000 per day, and maybe a few points in the back end, but nothing wild or anything like that. And yeah, next thing you know, you have Daniel Baldwin in the movie.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean,
It's not not that hard.
Yeah, we had Jason Miller on a couple months ago, and they had Michael Shannon in their film. Jason's from Arkansas as well. We went to school with him. And, it's a similar situation. Like, there's a few connections here and there, but it seems like that's one of the things as far as I wanted to ask you the question is that a lot of people feel like, oh, I can never get that person or that it's unattainable. And it's like, well, A, they're human just like you are too. And B, sometimes people just want to play. Like, sometimes it's not always about the money. It does help, of course. But sometimes it's about, hey, either I want to do a favor, or B, I think you have a really good story and I'm okay taking a cut to help you tell that story,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's Michael Shannon's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think, I believe what he said was, I think they ended up somehow getting the script in his hands, and he liked it a lot. And I think that ended up being a big reason they were even able to get him. And I think, especially, Michael Shannon's an A-lister at this point, in his career. And so, he gets to choose what he wants to do. But, it is different, pointing out, like, in LA, you kind of have all these options because, no one's out of reach. In Arkansas, it's similar, but we only have about 5 people you want to reach. But they're reachable, but it's only about 5. It's like the stars that have settled here in the twilight of their careers, or the certain directors that grew up here that we can have connections to. But yeah, no, it's true. I think there's an element of, as artists, I'm sure we're all familiar with self-doubt and the insecurity that comes up with just making art and putting it out there. And I'm sure there's a part of that too, but just asking, or just, and even it can be as easy as just sending it, like you said, sending an email to an agent, or, going on IMDb Pro and figuring out what agency represents them. And you know what I mean? There's very, simple ways to at least get in contact. And if you can find the right budget and all that kind of stuff, it's possible.
Yeah, I had No Way Out is another feature that's out right now. And originally it was a Bigfoot movie. And I actually, just back to our conversation of who you can reach out to, I literally got it in the hands of Marilyn Manson to direct it. And we even jumped on a phone call. And my whole pitch was, I know you love movies. This is this really cool Bigfoot film. I feel like this is a great way to start directing, and you could drop a song to the movie. So they were going back and forth, and then I don't know, they passed eventually. But that's just saying, fucking Marilyn Manson, it's
wow, everything's
reachable. Yeah, and just so you know, your viewers, I'm reachable. I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? I know, you see my credits and Donovan speaks me up, and I'm reachable. It's cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, all you have to do is fly you down to Arkansas, right? Well, you can drive.
That's
it's only like 24 straight hours of driving. I've made the trip in. I drove to LA in 24 hours. I'm kidding. No, it was awful. Yeah. It was an awful drive.
Yeah. It's a terrible drive. Don't ever drive me down there.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad drive. Yeah. No, speaking of the handler, I'm an action guy. I love every movie type possible, but I really love action movies. So I had a few questions for that. I did get a chance to watch the movie, and you guys have a lot of action sequences in this movie. And I have a few questions. How long do you guys prepare for each of these sequences? And then B, how tired were you at the end of these days? You're throwing so many punches and they are too, so many kicks, and you're being thrown up against walls and all this other kind of stuff. It seems like I was as a kid, I want to be an action star, but then you watch some of this stuff and you're like, God dang, maybe I just want to be a writer,
Yeah. Well, first I want to say thank you for actually renting the film, because I offered to send you the link, and you guys were like, we're going to support.
No, we want to support it.
I appreciate that. I've been in interviews during this handler kind of press thing where they've either, send me the link, or they didn't even watch it prior to us talking. And I'm like,
Really?
all right, well, you know, at least you could do is watch the movie, right? But anyway,
Right.
so prep for this was like, I've never even thought about being an action star. Like when you mentioned with you and your dad watching movies, same with me and my dad watching like Predator or like, you know, Running Man or something like that on a Sunday morning, right? And him like loving it when like Arnold kicks ass or whatever, and me just looking at him like, oh, this is what grown ass men do, right? So into this, I knew because of just my physique in general, even if I'm in great shape, you know, I'm no Arnold, I'm no like Claude Van Damme trained fighter, but I can be more of a Bruce Willis diehard, and I can still fight and be tough. And like, so that son and their dad watching could still root for me in a sense, right? So going into that kind of drove me every day through the day, no matter how tired I got. As far as rehearsals were on the spot. There was we shot the whole movie in like 7 days. So
oh wow.
Yeah, it was really quick. So it was multiple fights a day. We'd have scheduling where we put a big casting call out between me, director, producer, like in our circle pretty much. Like, hey, do you have some fighting experience? Have you done this stuff before? And everybody who said yes, like honestly, like none of y'all knew how to fight. All right, let's be honest here. Taibo does not count, right?
They're doing their Jedi fights in the garage.
Yeah,
right?
So Matter Dems is our fight choreographer. He also trained me.
Was he the guy in the middle end and like in the movie tie outfit? Is he the guy that trained you?
He's the guy that trained me, and then at the end, that's that huge fight between him and I. Right.
That's
him.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's a real fighter, and
I could tell. I could tell though.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, not only
you could tell
he shredded.
Yeah.
His flexibility is a whole nother thing, but. So the director would be like, we had this one house where pretty much, you know, you saw the whole movie takes place, and the director would be like, okay, well, let's have the fight happen here and then end there, right? And then Matt would come in and be like, okay, let's do this, and like we practice it like a few times, and then pretty much action. But I knew that like for me, because I was doing multiple fights every day, like I couldn't get hurt, right? So. Before every fight, I knew neither of us rehearsed enough before they said action, but I knew that they even had less training than I did. So I'd stop them and I'd be like, listen, like, it doesn't matter what's happening around us. You know, I know your adrenaline's going to go when they say action. Mine is too. We want to be fast and awesome, make it look real, but this is not worth either of us getting hurt. Slow it down. Let's make sure we're safe. We can always start over again. And most of the time that went out the window as soon as I said action. Right. But at least I tried to protect myself in that sense, right? So yeah, rehearsals were on the fly. And but as far as training for me, he gave me 30 days with Matt. And it went from me literally, I took like a boxing class, maybe like a year before, a little bit, right? So never really thrown a punch or a kick or anything, and trained every day with him. And it kind of fooled people into thinking I was a fighter.
No, that's awesome. Now, I didn't check the IMDb for this particular piece of information, but I could be wrong. Is that Jamie Nelson also in the movie? Was she in that one and in Bad Bones? There was an actress that you're fighting. It looks like Jamie from Bad Bones. Am I wrong on that? I think I'm wrong on that.
Wrong name. Madison Bullock.
Madison Bullock. Okay,
Madison Bullock
but it's the same actress though.
Same actress. So Madison plays my wife in Bad Bones, and I fight her in The Handler.
Okay, gotcha. I got the name wrong, I guess. But yeah, no, I saw her and I was like, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure she's in Bad Bones with Scott. Yeah, that's really cool. Is that how you brought her on to Bad Bones, or?
That's how I met her, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I feel like we crossed paths before, but I didn't really know her. And then we had the fighting scene, and she was pretty impressed on just like my ability to take control of the scene or whatever it was. But and then when casting came around for Bad Bones, and we were going through a few girls that I knew, her name came up, and she killed it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. No, speaking of Bad Bones, you mentioned making you watched horror films like The Fly growing up, that kind of thing. Actually, let me pause real quick. First of all, my dad's favorite movie was Predator. And also I had a Hall of Arnold dedicated in my apartment where I had a Mr. Freestandy at the end of it and Arnold Laserdisc on the wall and everything. So you're in good company, by the way.
There was a TV that played like looped Arnold like a montage of just Arnold badass things, from all his movies.
Yeah, just one-liners and a scene from all of his movies to a certain point. Yeah, so no, yeah,
he's the best. I actually met him too. I met him at the Gold's
I've
Gym.
shook his. Oh, really? Okay. I've shook his hand, but it wasn't. I didn't. We didn't meet each other. Yeah. I went to his. I saw him at South by Southwest a couple of years back. I think it was the year before last, before it got shut down because of COVID, or 2 years before. But when I first went to his restaurant in late '90s, like I think I was 7. They had a cigar month. They had a restaurant called Shotzi's, and it was Arnold's restaurant. And I went there with my mom and dad to meet him because he's there the first Monday of every month. And this is like the first Monday he missed in like 3 years. So I missed my chance, but I got him again 2 years ago, like 20 years later, I think I got him. So I
tell me about what happened. Yeah. This is a big moment, man. Tell me how it went. You were nervous?
Well, I mean, honestly, I got there early for this. It was like a gerrymandering kind of conference, but it also was about just some of the movies he had down the pipeline. And essentially, I'll wrap it up real quick, but I was in the very front, like second front row, and I kind of felt it coming. I felt it ending, so I kind of started getting up. And then by the time it come down, he was at the very front for a second. I walked up to him, and then I shook his hand. And I was like, okay, I touched the man's hand. I got to get like it tattooed on my hand or his hand on my hand or something. So I shook his hand and he acknowledged me like, hey, nice to meet you. And then I turned around and I was in a room with like 2,000 people. And then I forgot about that until I turned around. Now there's 2,000 people like swarming me to get to him. And honestly, I felt bad for him because they were hopping on the stage and they were pulling at him. And he's, at the time, he's like 75, 76 now. He was 74 then. So, and he's still a big guy, but it's just, it's a lot of fame, people just pulling at you just to touch you. It's pretty wild. But I'm sorry, Daniel. How did you meet Arnold, Chris? I got to know now.
Oh, so I know he trains at the Gold's Gym. They call it the Mecca. Mm-hmm. It's in Venice. And like if you get there around like 7 a.m, certain days he's there training with his buddy, and it's like an old school lifter from, I don't know, the 70s as well. I don't know exactly who it is. He's not in pumping iron. So, but just a guy that kind of looks out for him. And, bodybuilders, I'm not a bodybuilder anymore, but I try to lift a little. And so bodybuilders would come up and talk with Arnold and talk with him. And you can tell they've kind of created a rapport. They're not fans anymore. They're just like gym buddies, right? And that's not me. I'm not that guy. So, I walked up to his friend and was like, hey, is Arnold cool with pictures or saying hi or anything like that? He's like, yeah, just wait till he's done with his workout. And then when he walks outside, just say what's up. And that's what normally people do. And he's cool. I was like, all right, great. And like my whole workout stopped because I just sat by the door, just like, yeah, this is it. I don't care. And I seen him and he like grabs his bike out the back and like he's walking outside. And then but there was already 100 people thinking what I was going to do outside already. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not wasting this. So I stormed in there and like bullied myself in. And I put my arm around him. I was like, Arnold, man, I'm such a fucking fan, dude. And he's like, oh, well, let's take a picture. I was like, cool. And then I was like, my dad and I used to watch you. And I made the steroid movie. And like, I had your poster on my wall. It was like a total fanboy moment. And like, he was like, oh, awesome. Yeah, thanks. That's great. It's great. Now, like, it was pretty much like, get out of my fucking way. There's like 300 kids behind you, right?
Sure.
So, but it was cool.
That's awesome, though. He's the man. He's something else.
Yeah, he really is.
No, so The Fly, you grew up with horror films. And, I'm not sure if you made a few other horror films besides this one, but we talked to Scott about it and we've seen the trailer now. And from what at least what I understand on social media, it potentially could be released in April this year. What was it like working on that movie? I know action movie, you worked on a drama with Anabolic Life, and now you're working on a horror film. What's the difference there? Like, is the mindset different? Is the acting different? Is that, just the feeling? What's the difference there?
Yeah. Like I want to say that each genre, like the only time certain films have like moments throughout them where it's like a little bit different than other films, but most of the time I approach it the same way. And it's like, I find out who this character is and like mannerisms. And I usually start when I'm building a character with like things like diet and like workout routine. And that kind of starts shaping who I think this guy is in general. And so for this set, like just because it is a thriller or horror movie, nothing's scary. Nothing is, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Sure.
you're just, you're just running through the motions to make it as believable as possible. And like I've been on other horror movies with special effects and nothing's scary, it's pretty cut and dry. Now there are moments like in The Handler where adrenaline is going because there's so much action, right? We know people could get hurt. So that heightens things. Or like in Anabolic Life when there's these like huge drama scenes where I'm crying because I want to like kill myself because I don't like the way I look. Obviously the whole vibe of the set kind of matches my energy, like out of respect, right? Like the stone gaffer is not going to be sitting there cracking jokes while I'm like smashing my head into a mirror for the scene, right? It's all about respect. But being on set with Bad Bones, like it was probably one of the most intimate sets I've been on. There was only a few of us working on it, right?
Sure.
In that house. But because of that, like we got close really quickly, and like everybody took it very serious, knowing that we were going to have to finish this film. We weren't going to have pickup days or anything.
Right.
Yeah, I recall from the conversation with Scott, I believe there was like was the actor, she got sick? Was that what happened during production, I believe? And that caused some just things you had to work around that were just, one of those things that happens on sets. You can plan everything perfectly and still something that you would never have predicted goes wrong, kind of thing, right?
It was my fault. I got sick first, actually.
Oh, no.
The truth comes out.
I was traveling before I got to Bad Bones, and I think I just got run down. And when I got there, I was like, something's weird. And then it just like, it was coughing nonstop. I didn't sleep for like the whole shoot. Oh, and then of course my wife, having to be wifey to me in the film, I felt so bad, like being that gross and sick and her having to be close and cute with me. So eventually she got sick as well. She lost her voice. I didn't lose mine. I just didn't sleep. But yeah, and it's funny because I tell Scott too, I'm like, man, I think if I was healthy, I would have made different choices in the film as the husband, right? Like maybe a little bit more loving, a little bit more close, but like I couldn't break the idea that I'm still Chris and I'm gross and I'm sick. And I think I don't think you'll see it in the movie, but I think there could have been even more love there. I honestly just felt so bad being that close to someone when I was that sick. And like, that's also saying COVID's still going around, right? It wasn't like this was shot during COVID time. So, there's that, but it was my fault.
Well, maybe like when you're stressed in the movie because of the bad bones that are coming to beat you up with their bones, that's the plot, right? Yeah. It'll help add to the genuine, like, physical, just strain you're showing. Yeah. Maybe it
might show up. Yeah, other than you giving the spoiler out, I mean, I think it also shows.
Sorry.
It'll show like the fatigue and mental kind of draining that goes with not sleeping the entire time. So it might work out.
Daniel, I think instead of doing the podcast and our other work in filmmaking, I think you should be like the guy who writes the small like log lines on posters. You know what I'm saying? These bones will beat you bad. I think you'd be great at that job.
I do. Yeah. No, I would. Yeah.
We know enough about the plot. We talked to Scott about it, and of course, we've seen the trailer and that kind of thing. We could probably guess a lot of it in terms of like, okay, we know that there's bad things that's going to happen at this house. But other than that, we kind of stayed away from spoilers because
we did.
I think we didn't really want to know, and also, of course, Scott doesn't want to reveal it to everybody too. But because we want to go in with fresh eyes too. We want to. That's the only downside about work on this stuff. Sometimes we already know the ending. We're like, damn, like now we can't be surprised, But
I'm surprised though still because on set, like I read the script, I was there, and I was still questioning things and where is this and why are we doing this and what's the motivations and like. So I'm really interested to see what this thing's like too. To be honest with you, like most times, like you're like, oh yeah, we did this and that's going to lead to that and people are going to see this. But honestly, with Bad Bones, like. I'm in the dark too with you guys, so we'll see.
That's awesome. You only got like half your pages, and yours are blacked out. Your lines, like a Marvel movie, basically. You're like, what?
Like a Marvel, only giving you one page a day. Yeah, exactly.
That was Scott. Scott's like that, man.
Yeah,
you learn your lines right before the scene. Yeah. Scott, what's my? Yeah, no, I got you. You kind of touched upon it earlier, but how did you like find out about Bad Bones, and how did you come a part of that project? Like, he's in Alaska and you're in LA. So how did that happen?
A little bit of
Yeah, it's a
distance
fun
there.
story. Yeah, what were we saying, Daniel?
Between Alaska and LA, there's a little bit of driving distance, just
A little bit of distance, right?
Yeah.
It starts with my Bigfoot film years ago, and I had an assistant at the time, and I said, I don't know why, but I wanted to shoot it in Alaska at that time. And I had her reach out to Google any production company that's in Alaska. And I made some connections there, one particular connection named Joe Hamilton. And I reached out to Joe with the movie, and we ended up making it there in Alaska with Joe. And it wasn't a great experience for anybody, but it kind of put Joe and I in the sense of like, we can make movies. I can bring LA actors and LA, crew, and you have money and land, and you're a production designer and direction. Like, we could do this. So we literally made 2 more movies that are in post-production. But during one of them, Scott was hired as like a local kind of, PA / third AC / grip, a whole bunch of a hybrid role for him. And him and I just got to chatting and talking and really kicked it off, because he's like a very kind of like, proper religious dude. And I'm like this, like shit, fuck, ass, blah, 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 like,
Yep,
right.
You bleep all that out. You bleep all that out. But,
No,
like,
we won't bleep it out.
Yeah, I'm like the opposite of Scott, right? And so I think just the opposites attract in that sense. And our love for filmmaking in general created the real friendship there. And towards the end of the shoot, I was like, so what have you been doing? And he showed me he had a short film, I think from school, forgot the name of it, but he was showing me like VFX for it and like stuff like that. And like, I saw the short and I was like, oh, like you understand how filmmaking works. Like, he had camera movements and correct, lens choices and things. And you could really tell right off the bat, with people. And I was like, so where's your feature? And he was like, oh, I'm not ready for that. I go, oh, all right. Well, when you decide to grow a pair, why don't you write a feature? And I'll only do a feature, but I'll come in and I'll star in it for free for you.
Oh,
and
good deal.
Good deal, right? And next thing you know, like 4 months later, he had a script for me. I was like, there you go.
Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. Remember you said for free, Chris?
Oh, sorry. There was a 3-month
that.
Time limit on that offer. I'm really sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, you didn't read the fine print. I whispered it.
I held him to that. I had an agreement where he has to pay me $1 million after it's out, but before, no.
It doesn't matter what it makes. He's just immediately in $1 million debt to you. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that, I kind of harp on or preach about around here. Me and Daniel both have at different levels taught at UCA in film and other things like that. And one of the things I think we've pressed upon to people is, of course, and it's not understated enough, is networking. And I think, one of the ways to do it, of course, is going to film festivals, is to make movies and to show your movies off and try to get some type of common ground with people. And the other thing is just to be on a lot of different movie sets and to, find like-minded individuals or people that you think are talented or X, Y, and Z. And it seems like right there, it's a perfect example of, Scott coming to a set, you guys hitting it off. And now you guys have made a feature together and, it's fixing to release relatively soon. That's a, quick turnaround. And that's a great thing because you've made some friends along the way and you got more stuff to show off now. Like, can you kind of talk about networking and what's your process of going about that? I mean, obviously I'm not just toot your horn. You're a charismatic guy. You're easy to talk to. What's some advice you give to people who might be more afraid to do that sort of thing?
First of all, I guess I got to invoice you for all those nice things you said about me. I guess send me your PayPal.
$10 a pop, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel's tallying him up back there on the show today.
Yeah.
He's got a marker. He just does this every time I say something nice.
Donovan, we're eating at Chili's tonight, baby.
Yes.
Yes. Kind of an Arkansas joke, but I like chili, so that's
there's lots of Chili's here.
Yeah. There's really Chili's a block away from me. It's not too far off.
Yeah, it's one of the good ones too.
I love Chili's.
Yeah, it is.
Networking in general, right? Like it starts with, at least as a filmmaker in general, it starts with joining an acting class. And I tell people, whether they're a writer or producer or director, get into an acting class, because those are people that are willing to work for free and are hungry. Like a lot of them are, and that's the kind of start of networking for me, was getting an acting class, finding like-minded people, finding people that like want to do bigger and better things and don't want to wait for auditions and things. And then that led to just being open to relationships. Like my business partner over the last couple of years actually did the red carpet for Anabolic Life and was like, dude, you like work a day job, you wrote, produced, and starred in this thing, like, and set up this premiere. He was like, that's fucking wild. Like I don't meet many people that have that kind of drive. And obviously that's the special case where I'm actually a very driven person, and you don't have to be as driven as me to be successful or network, but that's just what works for me, obviously. So yeah, it's being open to those kind of relationships and saying yes most of the time to things. Like I won't do another student film, but I did say yes once to that, and I did meet people on it. But eventually you have to say no to things too. But at the beginning, like say yes, and like I think on smaller projects too, like have like shows some balls or whatever, right? And like if they're hiring background, be like, listen, like I'll do it, no problem, but can you give me a line? Like it's not that hard for them to give you a line. And on smaller projects, like to me, if someone like kind of stood up and was like, well, I'd love to say this, fuck it, why not? Like those are good moments to help you network, because people recognize like that guy. You weren't just the background. You were like, hey, can I, be in the scene, be cool. So yeah, and then now it turns into kind of a different thing. It turns into this kind of red carpet PR thing that I've done over the last couple of years. And it's going to events and premieres and walking down the red carpet, getting your photo taken. And then that personification of being busy, to me, also leads to more work. Like my friend Tyrone always tells me that no one wants to eat at an empty restaurant. And so that's kind of my new outlook on my career, and what I do is to always look busy, even if I'm not. So I think that it's not strictly networking, but it's about getting bigger and better jobs, right? So it's all hand in hand.
No, that's awesome. And this is a little off that topic there, but something you said kind of sparked a little nugget in my brain. You talked about, you're on set and say your background or something into the fact, and you asked, hey, can I have a line of some sort? And it feels like, there's always this push and pull. I've talked with a few people of like, what's the level of collaboration you allow on a film set in terms of, do you want the PA to be giving direction, I'm saying, coming in and giving direction, or someone in the background, hey, can I say something? Or, hey, maybe you should put the camera over there. Those are extreme cases. But I guess what my question is, how do you feel about collaboration in terms of, for me, there's a fine line there. Like sometimes, no, you need to say this line because it means something and it's going to, it has a weight to it. And no, we have to have the camera here because it's, it's what we need to have happen. But there's also, I try to keep the idea that the best idea wins. It's not always the case. Sometimes they're like, no, Donovan's idea is what's going to win, but you can't help all that. But what's your philosophy on like that on set?
Yeah. And back to like asking for a line as background, like don't do that on a legitimate set. Like that's like if a friend is like, hey, I need someone to like cross frame or something like that. Like, that's when you speak up and you go, hey, listen, I don't mind helping you out, but like, give me something, right? But like,
gotcha.
I was on a film called I Hate Kids, and that had like a little bit over $1 million budget, right? So there was a lot of people on set, a lot of cost per day, and like, that's not a place where I would go, I think the camera would be better here.
Right.
Those kind of situations, because you have to read your room, right? And like, at that budget level, that's a pretty well-oiled machine. Everybody has their task and their job, and they do it very efficiently. You would just be slowing them down by giving them ideas at that point. And I'm a filmmaker. It's not like I'm just some actor dude that reads lines. Like I also produce and I've made movies, and I still wouldn't tell them where to put the camera. So you have to read your room when it comes down to collaboration as an actor. But I also think that in the hierarchy of things, your producers, directors, your DP, gaffer, like the camera department, and like not even really above the line, like mostly a director, should be the only ones talking about where that camera goes, right? Now, if as an actor and the camera's on you, and like you could see that maybe they're not liking what's happening, and you have an idea, at that point, why not, right? Like it might work, it might not. At least that might lead to another thing that makes the scene work. So I think that's perfectly okay. Like in the IA Kids, if what they were doing with the camera, and we were doing it a bunch of times, they're like, it's not you guys, it's camera, we're trying to figure it out. And I was like, oh, and if I had an idea there, I would feel confident at least bringing it up, because I could see they were searching for collaboration at that point. But from the get-go, I wouldn't be like, you know what, that jib move right there, nah, not for me, man. Like, I would never, But yeah.
Hey, Mr. Spielberg, do you think you could like a little slower on your pushing? Yeah, no, that's a great answer, and that's what I wanted to hear. There's always, I wanted validation, Chris. No, there's always, you're in different. You're in different.
You read the script well. You followed the script.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. All the answers have been great tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in different communities and different schools of thought, so to speak. And so I always just want to ask individual people as we go along this journey. Me and Daniel's curating here, filmmakers and their X, Y, and Z. Just kind of like what's the temperature like, everywhere else, kind of thing, and what's the vibe? Because I think sometimes, especially in a place like Arkansas, where the community is small and we everybody kind of knows everybody, they think it's different sometimes here than it is out there. And I really think it's not. I think it's just what people are out there doing. It might be just a little bit bigger and have a little more, like, as you said, oil in the machine, so to speak. And I think that if you want to, play in the big leagues, you need to act like you're doing the same things that they're doing up there too. I think it's, perfect practice makes perfect, sort of thing. But that's awesome. I was going to say, what is like the biggest piece of advice you would give to somebody? We talked about actors, but like, let's say filmmaking in general. I mean, like, what if they want to get into it? Like, what would you say? Hey, go here first.
Yeah. I keep saying it, but I would say join an acting class. If you're a writer or a filmmaker, it's all about actors anyways. They're the center of your story. They're the center of your frame. So why not be in their environment for a little bit? Watch them, see how actors try to find themselves. And then acting coaches are just directors. So now you're learning how actors can take direction well, or if it's a shitty coach or a shitty teacher, like how not to give direction to get to your actors. And I think also trying to do some acting as a filmmaker only puts you in their shoes a little bit better. So you have a better understanding on what's it like with that camera right in your face. So I always start with that. I also tell writers and directors and producers and things like that, like specifically those kind, like art department and stuff, I don't have that much knowledge in, so I couldn't really help too much. But, you're trying to be the top dog, the DP, the director or producer. I tell them, like, this is hard. Like, though everybody kind of thinks that they can be a director. Look at me. I think I can direct. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm an actor, right? So imagine directors who want to be just directors. So I tell them that you got to put in the work. You got to network. You got to look like you're busy. You got to, like you said, you got to create. You got to write your own reel. And I also like the idea of keeping your circle where you have, like, your parents and your family and your girl, your significant other. And of course, they're always going to, most of the time, support you and be like, well, it was, even if it was crap, they'd be like, well, I saw what you did there and that was good. Joe Schmo, he doesn't give a shit what you kind of tried to do. He knows that sucks because that's not John Wick, or that's not a Spielberg move, or something. Right. So, and then also in your circle, you need friends that like can be a little more honest with you. But obviously Definitely. You don't want someone that tells you your shit sucks, but maybe someone that goes, yeah, that's cool, but like, did you think about doing it like this? Like, there's ways to obviously communicate in the art world without destroying our souls even more. But yeah, so that's what I think. Have a correct circle, network, look busy, create your own stuff, and take an acting class or two.
I think that's really cool, the acting class bit, because I think, especially I think you're right, especially for people that want to write and direct. it's only, at the very least, it's only going to give you a better perspective of the person that you're trying to get a performance out of, right? And I think that's something that, even as you said, I was like, oh shit, I did a lot of acting in college and in high school, but it's something that, as the years have gone on and, other jobs have come into place, it's something that's just, I haven't done as often. I'm like, you know what? I think I need to do an acting class. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah, thanks.
I tell Daniel how bad his stuff is all the time. I'm like, you gotta
does.
get better, So
Yeah.
no,
It doesn't work though for some reason. Yeah.
Keep sucking.
I mean, I think there's a nugget there that isn't spoken out a lot about in terms of criticism, and it is finding the people that will tell you, hey, this isn't working or X, Y, and Z. Part of that is the people that you find to tell you that. They might find somebody that can also help you find a solution as well as critique it, because like one of the worst notes ever you could get like in a movie script would be like, make it funnier, or whatever. And granted, sometimes people don't know how to communicate that. I'm talking like executives in that example, who wish they should know how to do that one. But sometimes your average Joe Blow friend won't know all the past. But my point is, there's different like hierarchies of criticism, right? There's sometimes you're at the early levels of stage of like filmmaking, and you're like, hey, this isn't working, I really need help. And then sometimes you're like fixing a premiere the next day, and you're showing somebody, and they're like, hey, maybe you should go fix this. Like, we picture locked like 7 months ago. We really can't do that. Give me, I'm showing you the movie kind of thing. You don't have to love it, but also like you got to read the room, so to speak, in terms of criticism also. And there's only so much you can do at certain levels of the process. No, that's great. I was going to ask, what do you have coming up next, Chris? I know you have Bad Bones coming up. We had the Handler release pretty recently. What's next for you?
I'm producing 2 things. Well, I have like I don't really believe that there's like small roles. There's like no small parts, right? Like there's like you're your own lead in any role. So I do have like a bunch of films coming out where I just was like a day player, was on for a few days, and like not considered even probably very minor supporting roles, but I come in there as like, I'm my own leading man in my role, right? So I have a few cool films coming out this year, and 2 films from Alaska that I'm the lead in with like a good cast from LA, and those are very interesting creative films. But I'm really excited. I did a vampire play in October that I wrote and starred in along with Madison from Bad Bones, and the reception from it was just massive. People just love this thing, and so I adapted it to a screenplay that's done now. So my next step this year is to try to figure out what kind of funding I can get for it, and possibly make a vampire movie this year. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, can I ask? Maybe you can't tell me, but what kind of vampire movie is it? Like, is it it has action in it? Are these like creatures of the night? Give me a little tease, Chris.
It's like a mix between like the original like Dracula with Gary Oldman, right? With the idea, like the basis of Interview with the Vampire. It follows a character named Susan Kane who is trying to make a name for herself and gets kind of pushed into this kind of like, hey, interview this guy who thinks he's a vampire, And so she comes there like completely like, this is just some like weird dude playing a vampire role, and then he's obviously like a real vampire. So as she asks him questions about his path, we then kind of do flashbacks and kind of showcase those scenes where he found love, or he found death, or he became a vampire. And it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Oh, wow. It's interesting. It's really cool. So when I asked, so we know that Bad Bones potentially has a release day of April this year. I think Scott's yet to announce how that's going to be delivered to people. How, just so our listeners know, how can they find Anabolic Life? How can they find The Handler and I Hate Kids and all these other projects you've been working on? Yeah,
you could easily just Google Chris Levine actor, and that kind of brings you everywhere. But Amazon Prime has a lot of my works. It has Anabolic Life. It has No Way Out. It has The Handler as well. And I think, like I Hate Kids is on there. Await the Dawn is on there. And then you can go to any Walmart starting today, actually, and buy a copy of The Handler. That was pretty cool.
Arkansas has like a few Walmarts.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
Walmarts.
Yeah.
Turns out they were born
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
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 Yep.
I had a pretty
They
cool
were.
moment last night. I went to a local Walmart and bought a couple of the copies on the shelf, and as I was checking out, the lady there was like, I was like, oh, do you have a Sharpie? Because there was like one left on the shelf and I was going to sign it, kind of something fun. And,
Oh, that's cool.
and like my friend that was with me was like, yeah, because that's him, right? And like all excited for me. And she was like, oh shit. And like, I ended up buying her a copy and like we took photos, and then all her like employees came over to see like, oh no way, this is you. Like it was a cool moment for me in my career,
That's cool.
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so that's what's going on. Yeah, it was cool.
What a baller move to like sign a copy of the movie and then leave it there on the rack for someone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they might buy it and be like, God dang it, someone signed this copy of this Blu-ray. They would have no idea the actor.
Depending on
on
how
the cover
legible
did it.
your signature is, they're like, what
That's
the
true.
hell? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh.
wrote thanks for watching Riker. That's my character name, and then I signed
Right.
it.
Oh, that's fun.
But who
That's
knows? They might
cool.
look at it and be like, "Oh, is this used? I don't want this."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Some guy Riker
And then-
rented this before us.
yeah,
wrote
like
on
I
it.
don't want this used movie.
That's awesome. Well, how can our listeners how can they find you, Chris, on social media? You have an Instagram handle, Twitter? Like give us how do we reach you? How do we get in touch with the man and legend?
If you want to get in and like just touch Chris, no,
Digitally, yes.
across the board, it's only Chris Levine, and pretty easy to find. And
Only Chris, like
and
only the word Chris Levine.
Yeah,
Okay,
only
cool.
the word
Okay.
Chris
Yeah.
Levine. Similar to OnlyFans, but I made this before OnlyFans, so here we
Yeah.
are.
Right, they owe you money.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah,
go.
they do.
Well, we'll make sure that we drop the links there in the
Cool.
the description below of
Like
the
right
pod.
here, right? Like go
Somewhere
go down
down here, somewhere.
Yeah, go down
you have to
there.
click on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
show more button, then you get all the
Right.
cool deets about
Show
the
more,
episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
that's what
hit
happens.
the like there, and then
Yep.
subscribe, and then turn notifications on there,
Yes.
All of them. Hit it.
and then don't
I
forget
need
about
you
the
on the
pop out
podcast.
here for the Scott episode if in case
Yeah.
you want to miss that.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, crap,
This
now we gotta
this
do
video's
that.
best for your best for viewer. Yeah, you're making more work for Daniel. No, he's talking about it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Well, Daniel,
Yeah,
how
you'll
can
get
our
it.
listeners write in? How can our listeners write into us, Daniel?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail. There you can write into the show and we will read it on the air. Maybe, probably. And let us know, what did you think of our interview with Chris? Have you watched Not Bad Bones? You haven't watched that. If you have, you are a very good hacker. But if not, have you watched The Handler? Have you watched The Anabolic Life? Give us some feedback. Let us know. And yes, follow Chris. Only Chris Levine. Now, I was really confused, so I want to make sure our listeners aren't. The word only is a part of that, like OnlyFans. Because at first I thought you just meant it's just Chris Levine, And then I was confused. I just want to make sure no one else was. So
Yeah.
Well, Chris, we can't thank you enough for being on here,
Yeah.
man. It's always a pleasure talking to fellow filmmakers. It's sometimes, especially during a time like this, when people can feel maybe secluded or kind of cut off from the rest of the world, and it's just a fun thing. It's our not only our hobby but our passion, and hopefully for all of us like a very lucrative career someday. And I can't thank you enough. And hopefully we have Bad Bones come out. Maybe we might have you and Scott back on again together to kind of talk about the movie and kind of give us a little breakdown of the events of the movie. It's a full spoiler review, so to speak. We could do that. That'd be fun, I think.
director,
That'd be
actor
great.
commentary. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That'd be fun. That's
I love
awesome.
that. Yeah. No, I had a great time with you guys. Scott said really nice things about you. Obviously, he knows you personally too. But yeah, I mean, just you guys are filmmakers. You love film. Like, the right questions. You let me talk. Like, those are all great things when I'm doing interviews. So it's about me. It's about me.
That's right.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Your viewers
right.
are like,
Daniel was
"This guy's a
texting me,
fucking
shut
asshole."
up, Donovan.
Yeah, I know. I was like, man, you were talking way too much. It's
No,
annoying.
No, yeah. He
No,
did
that's
talk
awesome.
a lot, didn't he, Daniel? Like the whole time.
He
Yeah,
did.
no, it's-
I mean,
it's
he
just-
did
it's
come up with
constant.
most of the questions, so I guess he's
It's
got some
It's his coffee. It's
reason.
That's what
Yeah,
it boils
yeah.
down to.
I think his beard
Um,
grew more during this
It
conversation.
It did, yeah.
It did
filled
grow
in a
more.
little more.
Quarter
It
inch
accidentally
thicker.
bumped my mic a few times. It was really weird.
Did grabbed it.
Yeah, I did. A baby hand come out and just grabbed the mic.
Yeah,
But no, just like Chris said, guys, if you can, please hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. That way you're updated on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, as well as all the cool content we have at 2 for 1 Studios. We have a lot of cool things around the corner, and we would love for you to be a part of that. And it's exclusively on YouTube, all those cool extra bits. And of course, find Podcast 2 for 1 on all your podcast services, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook Podcasts, all that stuff. Where it's
Does
there.
Facebook have
It's
podcasts?
There. They do now. It's a new thing.
Oh, wow.
Last week or so.
I thought that
It's
was
new
a
thing.
joke. Okay.
No, it's a real. It's
Facebook
a real thing
has
now, yeah.
podcasts. Wow. Why do you know?
They do. They
You know, if
do.
you guys want, I could do like a little, like, you could use like a separate clip, like I'm Chris Levine, and if you aren't listening to 2 for 1 podcast, then you're missing out on a great deal.
That'd be awesome.
Yes, that'd
we'll have
be
the
great.
Disney Channel logo come in. You know, like,
Yeah, you have to do a
okay,
paint
cool.
thing of like
Yeah, exactly.
2 for 1.
Paint 2 for 1. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Anyway, guys, again, one last time, thank you so much, Chris. My name is Donovan Thompson,
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
I'm Chris Levine.
and we have spoken.